Shalom. Welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Address. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We do appreciate your time for what I promise will be a very, very interesting conversation with our very, very special guest, Sam Simon coming to us all the way from Virginia. So before we get to Sam, I just want to make you aware, because we are approaching the Passover season, I want to make you aware of a new CCA Press Haggadah called Haggadah Shel Erev Rav, the Mixed Multitude Haggadah. It contains special illustrations by Shona Benjamin. It is a Haggadah just being published by the CCAR Press that talks about the multivocality of the Jewish community. It was done in partnership with Central Synagogue of New York City in honoring Rabbi Angela Buchdahl's 20 years with Central Synagogue. If you're interested in obtaining this for your own collection or for your own Seder, the easiest thing to do is go to ccarpress.org and you'll be able to order it. It is, again, the Haggadah Shel Erev Rav, the Mixed Multitude Haggadah, ccarpress.org, and thank the CCR Press and Central Synagogue for their cooperation. Mr. Sam Simon from Virginia, from outside of Washington, D.C., is our guest today to talk about something absolutely fascinating and unique. And he was the subject of a major interview and article a while ago from the Washington Post entitled, "In a One-Man Play, an 80-Year-Old Chronicles His Own Dementia." Sam, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. How are you?
I'm as good as I can be with Alzheimer's, but I'm good. It's a good day.
It is a good day. It's a good day. So thank you very much. Lots to talk about, lots to unpack, but let me get right to the core of the matter. What is Dementia Man, an existential journey? What is that?
It's a one-man play. It is an interesting, challenging. It's in a 1-hour play that is available to bring Susan and me to perform it, but it is the story, and it is a play that gets adapted as my time goes on, by the way, but it has its structure that addresses the issue. It tells the story from diagnosis and ends with it to dealing with some of the challenging narratives in this space. One is that how terrible it is to get the disease. There is I'm a counter voice to, because I confronted it, that suicide is better. In fact, I had been listening shortly after getting the diagnosis to a conversation on as I was exercising, on a blog where somebody was saying, "Why don't we have accompanied suicide in America?" And I thought for a nanosecond, should I do that? And that energized me. I've done some other theatrical work that the way to address my diagnosis and to give me meaning as I move forward. In fact, for as long as I can and able to do this, to tell not only my story, but the values behind finding a way to have a meaningful life with this disease and explicitly rejecting the concept of suicide, accompanied suicide, and discovering at the end that there's, spoiler alert, that maybe there's one thing in me that will help bring a cure for Alzheimer's, even if it's just a nanosecond earlier.
So
That's a gift in me. So it's autobiographical. I start out with the diagnosis, but a little bit about my family, and then into the journey, and then this idea of living a meaningful life with this disease.
So you're a public interest lawyer. You worked with individuals such as Ralph Nader. What you just said it's a very Jewish response. In other words, faced with something momentous and tragic, you want to find meaning in it. And so the vehicle, and this is why I wanted people to hear about this, is that you do a one-act play. And you do this several times a year, once a month. upon request. How often do you perform this Dementia Man?
I've been privileged to do it on average 2 to 3 times a month.
Wow.
So we started in July of 2023, and it's been well over 100 performances. I've just announced that I will be available under certain circumstances to do it remotely. Because it deals with suicide, I've been very reluctant to have it on video and unmediated. And I'm still, if I do this over the internet, I want it in a mediated audience where somebody's there and the like, because 2026, to jump to this, is the first year baby boomers turn 80.
Yes, I'm very well aware of that.
I was looking into this, and within 5 years, we will have more 80-year-old people in our population than ever in history.
That is the statistics that are being touted are very frightening. I mean, I think it was the last statistic I read that by 2034, which is not that far away, there'll be more people over 60 than there will be 18 and under in the United States. And our own Jewish community, this is something that we talk about a lot in Jewish Sacred Aging. If you take the Pew study that was published 5 years ago, over 50% of our entire Jewish community in America are people over the age of 50. The organized Jewish community doesn't want to deal with it, but the reality is there, yes. And
it creates a huge dilemma, by the way. My wife and I are members of the Temple Road of Shalom here in Northern Virginia, Falls Church. Technically, we're in Fairfax, but we're like the 10th largest.
yeah, I know the synagogue very well.
And the dilemma is we've got this huge cohort aging that needs to be embraced, and we need to keep building the membership, which is the younger. And, I'm sure other places are dealing with that. And one of the other things in this play is to eliminate the tragedy narrative of these diagnoses. And, Susan and I are 80. We just turned 80. We're living in our 81st year, therefore. But we want to have the best years of our life now, still, that's still a possibility, even with the diagnosis. And that is really the reason I do this work, is that I believe there needs to be voices like mine, not just me, and there are other voices, that you can have a meaningful life with the disease, and that increasingly there are going to be resources. And even our synagogue now, this was years ago, helped create a senior living place near our building called Chesterbrook. But there are any sort of Jewish responses. But my personal story is, autobiographical, but it is about confronting, now what? What should I do?
So in the article, you talk about right after the diagnosis, slipping into what I think you called the nothingness place. What did you mean by that?
Well, the nothingness place is when is somebody like me able to convince my doctor that there's something other than normal aging going on. I've been complaining about my memory for a while, and you're just an overeducated man overreacting to normal aging. And then I begin to develop an event, a symptom, if you will. I could be sitting trying to remember something, and I would literally, in my head, which is my reality, leave the present and be as if I'm floating in space. But I'm looking for that answer I wanted, and I expected to just be on the other side of this infinite, blank nothingness. No light, but I have eyes, no sound, but I have ear. Now, how long does that last? I don't know. It might only last a minute or a second. But for me, in real time, in my time, in my head, it could be as if I was there forever. And then I come back. And it took me a while to understand. It was scary. It was hard to describe to others. I remember being in my third opinion but there was a neurology intern in the room. She said, is that nothingness thing? is that an hallucination or was it real? And I go, well, it's a real place. And I realized, no, it's not real. It's an hallucination. But it was so real that I mean,
It's real to you.
it was real to me.
Right.
It was, but in reality, I wasn't in outer space or any place. I was just sitting in that chair. And, the other thing is how something could feel like it lasts so long in your head and be yet so short in reality. It's confusing. Anyway, there is some medicine, the good news, the medicine that I can be like on the edge of it, but I have not slipped back there lightly.
All right. You have this amazingly wonderful, beautiful, it's probably a million different adjectives quote that I want to ask you to respond to. You're quoted as saying, if I'm going to die from this, why waste the trip? Our life has been as good as it can be. I just want to do the best I can until I can't and be a net positive for the world, unquote. That's a magnificent statement of confronting reality and then trying to make meaning out of it. So I guess I have to ask you as a rabbi, and you're an active member of I think, Amy Schwartzman's congregation. Give her a hug for me. She grew up here in Philly and is a loyal Camp Harlem rabbi. How much of that quote can be traced back to your own Jewish neshama?
Yeah, I think I almost have to say all of it.
All right.
Susan, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, by the way.
Wow.
We were members of Temple Mount Sinai.
All right. I've been there.
Okay, it traces back my uncle, who actually was 12. My family moved there because my uncle Samuel Alfman had TB, no cure. They said go to a higher altitude. El Paso has a higher altitude. They were met by Rabbi Martin Zalanka. And Samuel Alfman, for his 18 months he lived after that, was secretary to Rabbi Martin Zalanka. We have a deeply Jewish roots in our family. And I think we grew up in a household where that was part of who we were. And, I also became the chauffeur blower for our synagogue. And then I married I had a mixed marriage. My wife is from Houston and she grew up at Beck Shur and a conservative.
Right.
Jewish woman. And, so part of this is life's journey. But just briefly, well, we were married in the month of our first anniversary. Her mother passed away and my father passed away. And we started going to services every Friday night. I was BBYO. I was at the temple. One of my most meaningful moments in life was in a confirmation class. I don't need to go into it right now, but we were deeply engaged in our synagogue and it was who we were. And then we started going every Friday night. And then I will have to say that I have been blessed with very close relationships with two rabbis. Both passed since now. Rabbi Laszlo Berkowitz, who was the founding rabbi of Temple Road of Shalom, and I became best friends. He was 15 years older than me, but I was his travel companion. He was a survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and I was his travel companion the first time he ever returned to Germany and 5 other times. We had an intimate relationship, and I think all of that, and then the late Rabbi Richard Sternberger he was a regional rabbi.
Right. He was I worked for the URJ. Dick Sternberger and I and another rabbi who has passed were very, very close, Joukowsky. And I knew Larry Berkowitz through Dick Sternberger.
Yeah, and I was his executor of his estate, by the way.
So
we like to say we were related by dog. I was the only non-rabbi to speak into.
People don't know what we're talking about, but Sternberger, I remember following up with him. We were going to a staff meeting in New York and he was driving up and he had the dog in the back. and all you could see
English sheepdog. English sheepdog.
was this dog in the tail. So I know you were very blessed. These two guys were really very, very interesting. People don't understand that generation of rabbis, what they did and how much they meant to so many people. So you were blessed. You were really blessed.
And so I don't know what it was other than I do know Rabbi Floyd Fearman was our rabbi growing up in El Paso. But I think I was at one time a rabbi wannabe. I also think, and I don't have answers, but I was one of the first lawyers. In 1970, Ralph Nader started a public interest law firm. There were 13 of us. My sense of wanting to speak against injustice feels almost genetic for me. Not really. My parents would have probably want me to keep my head down because they were still Holocaust and post-Holocaust era in the South. Last Night of Ballyhoo, have you seen it, is about keeping your head down. And there was a bit of that. I almost feel like I've been genetic. And one day they'll find the gene in the play. It's called, I Think I Was Born in Trouble. 4 sisters, 3 of them older than me. What else was I going to do? And the parents didn't always like it, but at 17, I got mad at the city council and walked downtown at a city council meeting and said that, tried to tell them that 11 p.m. curfews for kids 17 and under was unconstitutional. And it became the lead article. I didn't tell my parents I was doing it. In the lead article in the morning paper one day, the next day, and boy, was I in trouble. I don't know. I think I've had the privilege to work with, Ralph Nader, and knew Ted Turner and some other people. I think I've come to believe that there is something genetic thing that some of us inherit. I don't want to say I'm quite like them, but I almost see the world through this social justice lens. It is how I feel. I want my life. I want to be a net positive. I would hope we all do.
Right.
In so many ways that we have a gift in our lives that whether it's just family as models, as of course, Judaism, Reform Judaism in particular. David Saperstein and I was on the Social Action Council of the RAC for a while, and I knew David pretty well. And he's seen the play and likes it quite a bit.
Tell him I said hello next time you see him.
Yeah, he happens to have a history in his family of Alzheimer's.
Right.
So I've done it. The play at our synagogue, they presented it, and Amy's seen it. But I just hope there are gifts in it. I want to be, like I said there, it's been who I've been. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great. Nobody's perfect, man.
So the play, it's how long is the play?
It's 60 minutes.
Okay.
It's an hour. And no, I don't memorize the lines.
So,
I can't do that.
No, I understand. Is there a Q&A afterwards? And I'm interested what people have said to you after the performance when they come up to you. Do they ask what kind of questions?
So we always have a discussion. And by the way, Susan, my wife, AKA, who has become known in this process, is my cognitive navigator.
It's a great term.
And it's a real word. And my surprise, the senior living professional world has begun adopting it. During the play, she's up front with the script. I have a script in my hand that I refer to. I can't memorize the whole play anymore. So a couple of the audience reaction. First of all, I learned. It's funny that I'm so surprised by it because I did another play. This is not my first play about something. Just real quick, Susan, my wife, had breast cancer in 2000. The doctors had pulled me aside, said she wasn't going to make it. They were clearly wrong. I ended up writing a play and performing one I could memorize about that. So this is not my first time, but the audience has taught me so much that I didn't understand, I don't think, and didn't see. One of the first things I was hearing from it, which surprised me, is I would get a thank you. And usually people told me, my dad, my husband, or my parents or grandparents had dementia. Always wondered what was going on in their head. I think I understand it a little bit better now. I can never imagine that. And I don't know what goes on in other people's head. And I say, I don't know, but thank you. I'm glad it was so meaningful to you. There are occasionally people with the disease also in the audience, more often a caregiver, but we've had both. One of the first things that happened that shocked me a little bit, but I'm totally aware of it now, is and this was at a synagogue, a woman stood up and said, my husband was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. He came home, went into his room, and he didn't come out. And what does that mean? It means he gave up. He turned inside. And I hear stories of that. And I hope if anybody hears my show, I help them not falling into that space. But it is, and I've also learned, and there's a saying, if you know one person with dementia, I hate the word, by the way, we can talk about that. You know one person with dementia. It is so unique, but the themes are somewhat similar about wondering what, if I can talk about what this nothingness place and what I experience in my head as I'm in the confusions, it then helps the caregiver know that, and the determination that they resonate with that of figuring out how to live a meaningful life with this disease. That's how I end the show. The show is based around the possibility of going to Switzerland and not.
Right.
And at the end, we turn this pink cup, which is supposedly an image of a cup of poison in it, over. Say, my hope is that with the support of my family, my community, and then the market of the audience, and maybe you too, see how many more meaningful years are left. Or actually, I say, how many more troublemaking years are left in me. It is such a challenging diagnosis. And the words and the narrative around cognitive decline, and the word dementia, which crazy, mad, insane, we're not that. There is a movement afoot to change the language, just like we stopped using retarded. There is an effort to get, the medical world has stopped.
What word would you use?
Cognitive disorder. I have a cognitive disorder. Yeah. I have a cognitive disorder. I have Alzheimer's disease. It's a cognitive disorder. And the medical world has gone there. The DSM-5, the medical system, calls it neurocognitive disorder, major or minor. Oh, I've got a neurocognitive disorder.
That's a lot to get on. That's a T-shirt.
Yeah. And there's some people who don't agree with me, who think that we can change the reactions to the word dementia. I think that's a bigger mountain to climb. I don't think that word should be in our vocabulary. It's going to be, as we've said, such a huge part of social and life for everyone. And, it's already starting there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Sam, if somebody wanted to connect with you to perhaps schedule the play, is there a website? Is there a phone number? Is there?
Well, DementiaMan.com, and I'm Sam at DementiaMan.com. Simple, and DementiaMan.com is up there, and we have the article still front page, the Washington Post. There was a videographer and a newspaper writer. Both were let go by the Post the next week. This was their last. Sadly, the Washington Post had a huge, downside. What surprised me, because my article had written about the movement in Norway to create open communities.
Right.
But there are neighborhoods where those with dementia, cognitive disorders, are open and out on the streets. There's a larger movement here, too, to get rid of locked memory units.
Right.
And I really enjoyed the article in the paper, and I sent him a note and said, hey, by the way, here I am. And he called me, and he got his editor's approval to write a story about what I was doing. He's a 29-year-old African-American young man. Wow, did he do a good job?
He did. It's a great article. So Sam at DementiaMan.com. Sam at DementiaMan.com. Sam, before we run out of time, There are people who may watch this or listen to this who will be dealing with this in their family, given the demographics, a lot more probably than we even want to admit. You are a troublemaker by your own description, a positive Jewish value-based troublemaker, the best kind of tikkun olamnik. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who's just come back from the doctor, who's just gotten that diagnosis? What would you say to them in their moment of, oh my God?
There are enormous number of resources to support people. There are a number of, we found federal resources, by the way. A big word of caution, be careful. There's also a huge amount of fraud in this area. It is disturbing to have it. People will take all sorts of your money. Stick with well-known medical systems. Also, most states and counties and cities, they can give you support. They can answer questions. They can direct you to positive things, finding a good doctor. We were referred to somebody who was really, really good. We're also privileged. We know that. The person we referred to who lost her husband had been the secretary to a president of the United States. But we found a strong doctor and a good reputation. So finding the right doctor and talking to the community, asking within the synagogue or your own family, going to your county for resources. I found a resource that, to my surprise, you'd think I'd know about it. It's just called Alzheimer's.gov. Now, there have been cutbacks in places, and I have a funny story about that. There's a newsletter comes out. There's good, solid information, and we can live. And I will say, my doctor, maybe you said it before, I don't remember, told me when I was diagnosed that it'd be 5 to 10 years before it'd get a lot worse. Now, everybody's different. Every journey's different. But I'm 7 years into it, and I'm doing a play on stage. Now, that doesn't mean that Susan and I haven't had to make big changes. I'm still driving barely. Susan's always in the car with me. We are moving into a senior living facility that has both an assisted and memory unit in it. And so we're downsizing. But I think there is a positive narrative about whatever happens. You may not want things to happen. And yet my thing is there is a positive. We can always live a meaningful, good life with whatever happens to us. And we can be models for that. Not that it's necessarily easy, but there was no guarantee to any of us that at the end there are gifts, literally, in everything that happens. It just takes a minute. It takes a little while to be able to find them. And that's why Susan and I talk about it. We're engaged in it. We have friends. Our synagogue happens to have a full-time person in charge of care support, and she's been helpful to us. And we found the resources, reliable resources, in our communities to support us.
Sam Simon, you are yourself a gift, and we thank you for being that troublemaker. And we wish you just peace and long life and good health, and continue to be that kochlefel, to stir up a pot, and say hello to Rabbi Schwartzman for me too. Thank you very much. To all of you, thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Secrets of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. We thank you very, very much for your time. Also, don't forget the Alzheimer's Association, huge resources available to you as well. We want to thank you and urge you to visit the website, jewishsacredaging.com. And if you'd like to support the work that we're doing in these podcasts, you'll find a very, very conveniently located donate button on the website, and just click on that and follow the directions. It's real simple, and we're very, very grateful for that. Secrets of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a big shout out to our genius producer, Steve Lubetkin. Thank you again for joining us. I am your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Take care, and until we see each other again, Take care of yourself. Most of all, in this day and age especially, be kind to one another.